Hello, everyone. Welcome to TSAM Digital. My name is Anna, and today I have the pleasure of speaking with Simon Swords, the Managing Director of Fundipedia. Welcome, Simon.
Hi, nice to meet you. Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much for being here. So Simon, to kick things off, would you like to tell me a little bit about Fundipedia? What does it do for clients?
Yeah, sure. So we built Fundipedia back in 2007, believe it or not, which feels like a long time ago. And we built it in partnership with Investec Asset Management, who are obviously now 91. Pleased to say they're still a client. We've never actually lost a client. And the original concept of Fundipedia was what would now be called a product master, right? So this concept of just getting all of your product information, funds, share class, registrations, listings, you name it, all in one central location. Since then, we've grown significantly. And not only have we grown in terms of the number of clients that we've taken on, but we've also expanded the amount and the type and the way in which we're able to manage data for clients. So we now work with the likes of HSBC and M&G, and we're constantly onboarding more and more clients. And the work we now do for them is not just the static data, but we're able to collect and validate and store and then disseminate out to the market a wide range of data from like the your traditional product data, fund share classes, but also the dynamic data, NAVs, portfolios, holdings, and much more. And the core benefit of that is that now more than ever, these asset management firms that we work with in our industry are incredibly data driven. ESG is obviously another layer of data over the top of that. And obviously we work with clients on that. We'll probably get to that a bit later. And it's so important that data is available throughout the organization, from the sales teams to the websites to the fact sheets, and then obviously out to the market. And not only do we help our clients kind of automate that data as it scales and ensure that it's all accurate and available everywhere, we check downstream, we reconcile with the market, out to the morning stars and so on, to ensure that the data that they're holding, that the investors are actually seeing, is accurate too. So, and then we've got some other modules that we've built in partnership with clients over the years, things like product development, So when they're launching a fund or a new share class, we've got some really powerful workflow automation that allows our clients to break down and, understand those steps that are involved and then automate those too. So we're constantly enhancing the product, but, at its very core, it's about ensuring that our asset management clients have got access to the data they need to do their jobs. And then that's on autopilot so they can get on with, where they really add value for their clients, which is obviously generating alpha, returns on investments, and keeping their margins keeping their overheads, to a minimum, so that they don't have to pass those fees on to a client. So some real efficiency savings, in addition to meeting regulatory reporting needs like ENT, EPT, fact sheets, and so on. So yeah, a super core focus on the data side of it for asset managers, helping them in that domain.
Thank you so much for that really detailed introduction. It sounds like you're doing a lot of exciting work around data. So I wanted to take a step back, and I wanted to ask, why can't asset managers build their own solutions for data management?
Good question. Some do, right? We still come into contact with asset managers. As recently as yesterday, I was chatting to a top 10 asset manager, and they've got a system in-house that, they've been using for 20 odd years. It's not a question of whether they can or not. And obviously the larger asset managers have got some really robust IT, teams. And, you look up at the BlackRocks and those types of firms, well, they're almost techie companies in a sense. So, they can build their own solutions, but it's really a question of whether they should or not. There's a lot of, there are upsides, I guess, to having your own tailor-made solution. Including and not limited to you get complete say and control in how that solution works, right? And if you're a particularly, unique asset manager and you do things in a particularly unique way, then maybe it's your only option. But I'd certainly go about discounting the idea of buying off the shelf before I went on a very long journey to build, an in-house version of Fundipedia. Reason being, you don't have to, have been around very long to have heard, not just in financial services, but in all domains where there's failed IT projects, right? Understanding what the requirements are, building those requirements, delivering them to the business, having that feedback loop, having those people in the business that understand how to build software that actually delivers on pain points is hard. It's also the case, and I say this, you know, I'm a technical guy, right? I come from an IT background, and I used to be a programmer, albeit a bad one. I know I work with people who are infinitely better programmers than I am, thank goodness. But I certainly understand what it is to be a programmer, and there's always this tendency in an IT department to focus on, let's build this new and shiny project, right? Let's really like nail this for the business. And after the first year, that might still be true, but 5 or 10 years down the line, do those people want to keep coming back to that project to maintain it? Probably not. So now and moreover, you might have IT turnover, especially now, right? Like trying to find good people in all areas of life to work for your organization is hard. IT resources particularly difficult to find at the moment. So you could have brain drain, and then suddenly you're left with this legacy system that you built in-house that you know, nobody really understands how it was put together. There was no documentation put together at the time. And so now you've got this legacy monolithic system that's really core to the backbone of your organization, but not necessarily does it have anyone who's still around that built it, nor are they interested in maintaining it because they're now building the next greatest and latest thing. So those are the potential disadvantages, but there's also some advantages to working with a firm, obviously like Fundipedia, but any fintech. And that's, you know, we don't just engage with 1 or 2 clients. We've got lots of asset manager clients, you know, and they range from trillion AUM down to like the 30, 40 billion. But the reality is they're all struggling with the same issues. And so we've built an ecosystem of asset managers who are all working on the same problems. And I think the most common question we're asked, either when we're prospecting a client or when we're on the implementation stage, is, well, how did the other asset managers solve this problem with Fundipedia? And I think if you build your own solution in-house, you're in danger of obviously reinventing the wheel and maybe going about it in a way that isn't going to work, right? So when you work with a fintech, you get all of those 15 years times all the clients that we work with, all of that knowledge in our team becomes knowledge that we can share with you so that you end up with the absolute best case outcome for the pain points that you want to solve. Obviously, we can spin out Fundipedia in 12 weeks. Building a system can take years. And then there's obviously the advantage that we are fundamentally predisposed to wanting to build this thing up and up over time, right? We're constantly looking for ways to add more value because we've got so many clients to get that value. So you benefit not just from day one advantages, but also the advantages of the system evolving over time. Because, you know, we do want to keep building it out because it is what we are, you know, it's what we get out of bed for every day. So a huge amount of upside in, you know, at least engaging with a buyer, you know, a vendor for these types of things before you go off on your journey to do a build, I would say anyway.
Absolutely. I mean, it sounds like a no-brainer to me. And I wanted to ask if there are maybe any other advantages to working with a fintech or, you know, versus an incumbent.
Yeah. I mean, of course, absolutely. So, you know, fintechs obviously, you know, and we've had this first-hand kind of feedback from clients like HSBC, right, where they've said, we used to work with, there's a saying in IT, but it's starting to become understood in the asset management world now. In the IT world, it would be like nobody ever got sacked for hiring IBM to do some work, right, back in the day, in the 80s and 90s. And it was the case in the asset management world in like the noughties and the 2010s, the 20 teens. Nobody would get in trouble if we outsourced this you know, data management stuff, whether that's the storage of our fund data or reconciliation or anything that sits around its servicing wise. You know, we're not going to get in trouble if we just give that to this incumbent that does this kind of data management stuff for a living, right? There's loads of data companies out there, but the reality is it's a different business. You know, being a technology provider is in our DNA. There are perhaps incumbent providers out there who obviously understand the data world really well, but they're not necessarily aligned to deliver technology solutions to asset managers, right? That's a very different proposition. It requires different skill sets. And so maybe they're not geared up to do that. And so despite understanding the data really well, they can't empower our asset manager clients to you know, benefit from technology. I think another advantage of working with a fintech or any fintech, not just us, is we are laser focused on our core problem, right? So the guts of what we do every day is data management in the asset management world. We are not split across multiple pain points, or indeed we're not even split across multiple industries, right? We're a niche in a niche, financial services, asset management within that niche. And so we've got very good at understanding the depths of the challenges that our clients are faced with, and building technology to solve those problems. If we were then, so we won't even, for example, get embroiled in things like fact sheet and kit production. There's loads of really good providers out there. Why would we do that? We'll just integrate with one. So we're laser focused. And I think it's fair to say that in the asset management industry, the data problems that exist have been evolving for decades, and they need people and firms with that depth of understanding and the technology in order to kind of help them out of the hole they might find themselves in. So it's this, I suppose in summary, it's a combination of a real depth of knowledge from the fintech and the technology that's laser focused on solving those problems. The incumbent providers, are too spread thin across too many things to be able to provide that kind of leverage.
Thank you so much. Actually, speaking of data problems, what are some of the common data problems that you see across the asset management industry? In other words, where do you see asset managers encountering the most pain?
I think there's lots of pain. And I think, like I touched on in the answer to the last question, a lot of it is from legacy, things. But I think that the core pain point in the asset management world is still to this day, do we have a central source of global, because most of these firms are global, trustworthy data that we can rely on in order to accurately produce regulatory reports or client reports, or, somewhere that we can naturally store ESG data, which is obviously now incredibly topical. And can we just have that data and that, centralized in the business and available throughout the business and downstream, and trust it? Because we run roundtables with clients, and, we'll get 7 or 8 asset managers around a table and do, follow a process of like empathy-led thinking, like it's called design thinking, right? And we ask them, across all of these things in this matrix, where do you feel the pain from the most? And the commonality of the answer across all of them is always in inconsistent data, inaccurate data, right? And then we start to probe on that. So why might the FCA, why might a regulator call? Well, it's going to be because we have inaccurate data published about funds, and they're unable to properly report in line with regulatory requirements, either on an SLA basis or to an accuracy basis. And all of that is rooted in data being accurate. And that really is what we focus on the most, To this day, we see clients struggling to, well, not necessarily our clients, but prospects in the market, asset managers that we engage with, who are just treading water, right? Oh, we've got to do an EET report now. Well, we'll just quickly knock that up from this spreadsheet, get that done for the 1st of June. We'll worry about the overall data problem at a later date. And I think those firms that don't start to take a more holistic kind of strategic governance view on their data are just stacking up the amount of homework they're ultimately going to have to do at some point down the line. You can't just keep putting plasters over the top of it. You've got to fix the fundamental issue. So I think inconsistent data is definitely where most of the pain emanates from, and it kind of bubbles up in all sorts of ways. I think the other thing, obviously, from the administrator side, is there's just a lot of technical debt, right? We pull data in from some of the upstream custodians and TPAs, and they physically cannot amend the way in which they share data because their systems are so legacy, and they struggle to change them. So there's a lot of issues over on that side that we're looking at dealing with too.
And actually, in relation to that, more specifically around regulation, how does Fundipedia and its team keep in the loop with the latest regulatory challenges, for example, ESG and EET, as you mentioned?
Yeah, sure. So we have a range of sources. I suppose the short answer to that question is that we make sure that we engage with people who either want to work with us or we go out to market and we seek partnerships to better understand everybody's view. So I think the list would be at a very high level. We have partnerships with firms like Deloitte and other smaller, more boutique industry experts who have been in the industry for decades. They bring a huge amount of knowledge to us in terms of what they're seeing across their client base, and we make a point of regularly engaging with them. We were lucky enough a couple of years ago, just before the pandemic, to be awarded the Investment Association's kind of award that year to join their cohort of fintech. It's like a fintech accelerator. Through them, we've made connections with the FCA and the Investment Association's policy team. We work very closely with both of those organisations, obviously, to make sure that we get a feel from them. They've got 400 asset manager members, right? So there's a huge wealth of data and information coming from them. Recently, we built a platform in response to some of the challenges that the IA was saying their members were experiencing around the common share class register. And that was previously a spreadsheet that we put into an automated platform on commonshareclassregister.org. So that's, I guess, evidence of, they told us about a problem that was plaguing not one asset manager, but about 150 asset managers. And within about 12 weeks, we had a technological solution spun up on the platform for them. So that's the power of these types of relationships, right? And then I guess, so that's like the outside in. And then within Fundipedia, we hold quarterly user groups. I touched on before, we do roundtables, not just with Deloitte and those types of firms, but with our own clients. And we make sure that we're constantly, asking our clients, where else is, like I said, it's a very deep set of pain points that our clients have around data. And we're constantly looking for ways to kind of peel back the layers on that and truly understand where the challenges lie in these firms, so that we can look at new ways to facilitate technology that solves them. So it's a combination of all of those things.
Absolutely. So I wanted to touch upon ESG, since obviously it's a very hot topic at the moment. And I wanted to ask, how is Fundipedia helping asset managers to solve for the regulatory reporting around ESG? So
we had to, obviously, the ESG, our folks, so we already work with things like EMT, EPT, Solvency II, those types of regulatory reports. We already build those out for clients off the data that we hold, and we put all of that on autopilot. So we see EET as yet another kind of regulatory report. So we've been engaging with our clients to understand where for starters, what is their ESG framework? And we've been working with ESG experts who have been working with our clients and Fundipedia to understand their data governance framework around ESG. And then from that, we've been deriving, what data do you need to store in order to be able to report, given this is the framework that you're telling the world, in your prospectuses and so on, that you're supporting, and where you're going to get this data from, what upstream sources, and obviously getting all of that modeled into Fundipedia. And then obviously, at a very low level, producing things like the EET report, which there's an EET Light report coming out on the 1st of June. We actually built a Fundi ESG module, and we've been so busy responding to client feedback on that and building that out, that if you go to our website, you won't find anything about it, because all of our existing clients are just too busy using it to get their EET reporting done. But we hope that in the next month or two that we'll get that up on the website. And so fundamentally, we've engaged with clients, and then in addition to that, we've built a module that specifically supports this EET reporting. And like I say, we're engaging with clients and providing some almost, very cost-effective consultancy around how they can better manage their ESG data, and then staying ahead of the curve, right? So we're working to ensure that we are mindful of what's around the corner on the ESG regulatory reporting, so that we're ahead of it, so that our technology is ahead of it, and our clients are benefiting from it. And that Fundi ESG module will be central to that over the next couple of years.
So if we fast forward 10 years from now, where do you see the asset management industry heading? Specifically, I'm thinking around the way in which it handles its technology and data.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think when we first built Fundipedia 15 years ago, we did talk to a few asset managers at the time, and they really didn't show much interest in it, to be honest. We landed a few clients back in the early 20 teens, but I also had a lot of coffee with a lot of, senior executives at asset managers, and they were very complimentary of what we were doing. But, great, nice idea, guys, but we've kind of got what we need at the moment. We don't need it. Fast forward 10 years to about 2016, 2017, and we started to see a real tide change around. We'd have, a person leave one firm, go to another firm. Where's your Fundipedia? Oh, we haven't got Fundipedia. Well, you need it for these reasons, right? And people started to approach us. And what started as a trickle is now is a real tide. And I think things, the drivers of that tide are manifold, but things like, the additional data required to report across ESG, the fact that there's going to be a generational shift in wealth, and younger people do care about sustainability perhaps more than older people for obvious reasons. So they're going to vote where they put their money. Yeah, but by understanding ESG credentials, and firms that aren't able to kind of validate that through proper data about their products are going to struggle. Margins are being squeezed. You can't just throw staff at issues anymore. There aren't enough people, right? I mean, look at the job numbers. There's more vacancies than ever before over the last 40 years, I think the National Office Statistics said. So you can't just say, well, we'll just hire 10 more people to manage that new ESG data. You've got to come at it from a more technologically savvy point of view. So I always think about Amazon, right? And that Amazon is a data company at its heart. And what they've done fantastically well is use that data to understand what people want to buy and then get those items in front of people. Asset managers need to go down that same path. And we always talk about Amazon as the Northern Star there, right? They need to better, they should already, and they're playing catch up a little bit, but we're working with them, and they're now starting to realize, right, at a minimum, we need to have our data in order. And then on from that, how can we leverage the data that we have to better understand the products that we have in order to better serve our clients? And I think in 10 years' time, especially, with the advent of technology coming through, it wouldn't surprise me, and this is some of the work that we're starting to spearhead with the industry, if the way that you've got the challenger banks like the Monzos and all of those type of things on the retail banking side, the asset management world, we would have, worked not just in our domain, but across the various technological and data domains in asset management to get rid of that technical debt and create them a solid foundation upon which they can then start to use that type of technology too. Because again, young people, that's the reality, right? They expect to be able to invest in assets and look at their portfolios and engage with this industry using their mobile phones and that type of technology. So I think we're now putting the foundations in place for that. And in 10 years' time, that will be A, what is expected by investors, institutional and retail, and B, that will obviously naturally be facilitated by the asset managers who have done a good job of keeping up with the times.
Absolutely. And obviously, speaking of the future, what are your plans for Fundipedia in the next 2 to 3 years?
Yeah, so I was thinking about, the other week where we said we would get to with the Investment Association when we pitched Fundipedia to get into their cohort back in 2020. I think I said to them at the time back in 2020, we'd come a long way, but we still had a little bit to learn, as I keep saying, this industry is so deep and so complicated, and there's so many legacy issues that I felt like we had a little bit more learning to do. And, but we were making some fantastic progress, and obviously the IA accelerated that enormously. I think combined with our knowledge of the industry now being incredibly deep, and we work with people who truly get it. I mean, our head of implementation has been in the industry 30 years. The industry is now getting it, right? Asset managers are now reaching out to us saying, we need to talk to you because we see what you're doing with other firms and we know that we need to do the same. So there's this lovely kind of, right, we all now kind of get in our industry what we need to do. Now we just need to do more of it. So that's where we are 2 or 3 years on from getting into the IA, and that's really good. I think one of the challenges that, not for us, but in general for the industry, because I mean, we're quite well established now, but I do think that financial services firms, especially asset managers, investment managers, struggle to engage with fintechs. So we're not just kind of selling on a case-by-case basis into the asset managers, we're also helping the industry overall find new and kind of perhaps innovative ways to engage with fintechs, because we think that that's just a sensible thing for the industry to do. So we want to help out. And we're also looking at ways in which we can help asset managers reduce the amount of cost they currently endure in the way in which they store data, and indeed where they find themselves giving data away in order to take advantage of a service and then having to buy it back. We're fairly confident that there's probably some efficiencies to be had there. So I suppose, in summary, over the next 2 or 3 years, we've got this lovely, optimal thing. Pandemic, thank goodness, is now behind us. People are now saying, right, we've got these projects. We're basically going to do more of the same, but we're also looking at various ways through the Investment Association, the FCA, and various other regulators, where we can find industry-wide solutions to problems like the common share class register that I mentioned earlier on. There are so many challenges in the industry. Actually, the biggest challenge for me is working out which ones we can provide the most leverage to and actually, help drive the industry forward the most. But yeah, lots of work to do, and we're looking forward to it for sure.
It definitely sounds like an exciting place to be. So obviously, best of luck with all the developments. But I also wanted to thank you for your time today. And I wanted to mention that everyone will be able to meet you on the 16th of June at TSM London. So we definitely encourage everyone to kind of register and come along and say hi and see you there.
Yeah, we've got some fantastic ESG giveaways. We'll be doing demos on the stand. We're going to have some of our team there, so you can come and talk to us about what we're seeing across the market. So yeah, like you, we're super excited about it. Can't wait.